Howdy! Welcome back to Bikini Bottom. We're no strangers to hated SpongeBob episodes here, but there have been times where I have completely disagreed with public opinion. There are episodes with mixed to terrible reviews that I might enjoy, just as you might. Or I might think they have an important, meaningful message that's worth telling. So, if you might indulge me, these are my 10 favorite infamous SpongeBob episodes. And agree or disagree, I'd love to hear what you think of these infamous episodes in the comments, or if you have a favorite infamous episode yourself. But without further faffing about, let's begin. Let's start with number 10. Ghost Host. Hang on, surely they jest. This was a very character-driven, interesting episode to me. It's probably got the most character development we've ever gotten of the Flying Dutchman. In case you don't remember, the Flying Dutchman crashes his ship, and then he crashes with SpongeBob for a very long time. Eventually, the Flying Dutchman loses all motivation and becomes a bit of a slob, and it falls on SpongeBob to get him off his couch and back out scaring people. Let's start with IMDb reviews. What did Pledge Rock say?
Ghost Host is shockingly terrifying. SpongeBob might get used to being haunted, but we don't. You don't have to be a kid to be terrified by this. A giant SpongeBob head has its eyes leave their sockets like slugs slithering, only to reveal a family of spiders crawling out. Spongebob Pants.
Okay, I admit, it's weird, but I never found it that scary as a kid. I found it too silly to be creepy. I also think it teaches a valuable lesson about exposure to fear. At first, SpongeBob is terrified by the Flying Dutchman, but he's constantly confronted by his fears, and eventually they just stop being scary. Say you've got arachnophobia, just regularly hang around spiders and they'll become less scary each time. Just obviously make sure they're non-poisonous spiders. Anyway, you get the point. What are some other comments on this episode?
It's weird, and there's barely a plot.
Oh, come on. There's a very strong plot about the Flying Dutchman redeeming himself as a scary ghost. After 3 videos, I'm starting to question the validity of this wiki. But hey, thank you to whoever writes it. It's been very entertaining to us. But these next comments, I'm gonna ask Nin to read these verbatim. Scummy of the Bob said,
1 out of 10. It tries its best just to scare kids. This episode is the best. You are stupid. Don't swear. Swearing is bad, a fandom user. He wasn't swearing.
oh, for Pete's sake, you guys, we're moving on. And for my 9th choice, NightLight. Wait, people dislike NightLight? Why? It's a very relatable gaze at what fear and imagination can do to us. According to some critics,
SpongeBob and Patrick are highly idiots in this episode. Unnecessary capital.
or,
Terrible episode. 2 out of 10.
yeah, well personally, I thought it was relatable. Interestingly, I found a lot of people on the spectrum are often scared or at least uncomfortable in the dark. And I have been too, so a bit like the episode Roller Cowards, I really connect with SpongeBob here. The story is, SpongeBob reads a scary book before bed, and when he turns his lights off, suddenly his imagination runs wild. And this demonstrates so well what can happen in real life. The most insignificant thing can suddenly become terrifying in the dark. SpongeBob switches his light on and off repeatedly, struggling to control his fears. And as his fear gets worse, it even seeps into his work, to the point where he's afraid to even enter a dark freezer. So obviously, SpongeBob gets a nightlight. And if there's ever been a demonstration that SpongeBob is OCD, it's this episode.
Now there's not 1 square inch of dark.
I mean, I find 1 or 2 lights in the house is enough to stop me tripping over. But you do you, buddy. Anyway, to quote what the Scumbob Wiki thought of this episode,
This episode is boring, and it goes off topic. SpongeBob and Patrick meander around too much.
yeah, I admit they definitely faff around a bit while they're lighting up the house, but I think it better demonstrates the point that their fear is controlling them too much. There's even a nifty cameo from Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, with a plot twist at the end that really took me by surprise. We even get a voice cameo from the Joker and the Jedi Master himself, Mark Hamill. He plays Mothman. Yeah, the ending's kinda silly, but I still ended up smirking, and I enjoy it enough that I've rewatched this infamous episode multiple times. And coming in at number 8, House Fancy. Oh, I find this episode funny, but it's hated by many people for a perfectly fair reason, because of a few seconds of footage. But those few seconds are really bad. Poor Squidward's toenail. Ugh. I actually consider this scene more painful to watch than the Splinter episode. But if you can look past that tiny bit of footage, you have a perfectly fine episode. And I do enjoy episodes where Squilliam comes back. Squidward's snooty cousin and arch nemesis is so over-the-top haughty and arrogant that it ends up funny. Basically, Squidward is watching the TV show House Fancy, and it turns out Squilliam's fancy house is a spotlight of the episode. But Squidward brashly claims that he has a fancier house. So with the camera crew on their way over, SpongeBob and Squidward have to make Squidward's house more fancy. What I appreciate most about this is all the great visuals in this episode, except for obviously one visual. Take Squilliam's house. Squilliam's house is just a treat to behold. It's so ridiculously, absurdly over-the-top fancy that I'm just like, how? And why does he have a 130-foot long sculpture of his unibrow made of doorknobs? And I'm not the first one to come to the defense of this episode. Other reviewers such as Calafox have too.
It's a solid episode. There were plenty of funny jokes, like the golden toilet, and Squidward actually managed to score a victory.
Yeah, a victory, and all he had to do was completely destroy his house in the process. But Calafox is right, and it's very rare to see Squidward get any victory in seasons 6 to 8. But the Spongebob Wiki has a real talent for nitpicking episodes like this, so what do they have to say?
SpongeBob is obnoxious and acts creepy when he spies on Squidward. SpongeBob also messes up Squidward's house.
Yeah, but Squidward liked that he messed up his house because he won House Fancy that way.
But it was mean. The toenail scene makes this hyper Scumbob.
Alright, Spongebob Wiki, you do you. And for number 7, Wormy. I think the make or break part of this episode is, are you okay with the live action footage of a fly? If you can tolerate it, you'll probably appreciate the rest of this episode, because the town's overreactions are really funny. But as we can see from reviews, not everyone can get past this footage, and that's okay. According to C. Gearhart,
5 out of 10. As a child, the episode Wormy only elevated my fear of insects to the extreme. Since then, I've become an avid horror movie buff and a connoisseur for all things scary and dark. But even then, I will refuse to watch Wormy.
well, at least the episode bettered your understanding of yourself. But I also relate to the discomfort here. I am also someone who's never found butterflies that beautiful or cute, and I feel when you look at them up close, they're actually kind of gross. I tend to think of them as over-glorified moths. It's like a moth with a really popular Instagram, and like the moth takes pictures of every food it eats. Anyway, in the cartoon, no one actually finds a butterfly that bad until they see it up close. Sure, they overreact. I mean, my reaction as a kid was just, ew, gross. And by seeing that unpleasant close-up of the fly, we understand their overreaction. It's meant to be gross, otherwise the town wouldn't be overreacting. The gross footage is why the town is in absolute shambles of terror. They're as creeped out as the audience is. So if you can get over Wormy looking like a close-up of a fly, you can enjoy the town's insanity here. And I like how Sandy plays a role here. She just comes back, and with a little knowledge, she accidentally saves the day. I don't know if anyone in the town actually learnt anything from this episode, but gave me a few laughs. Fortunately, this infamously ugly episode was paired with a much prettier episode. We get Pretty Patties in the Patty Hype episode, so it kinda evens out from a heathenly, ghastly ugly episode to just a bad haircut of an episode. And here we are at 6, Spongehenge. Whoa, apparently this isn't just infamous, but ultra infamous. Why? Explain yourself, Spongebob Wiki.
It's a torture episode for SpongeBob. He's repeatedly chased by jellyfish, and he's forced to stay in a cave for a long time, and later finding everything he cared about is gone. It's very mean-spirited.
Gee, I hope I never helped coin that overused word on this wiki. Mean-spirited can't just be applied every time they think a scene is too nasty.
Its tone is nightmarish. It's too dark.
Really? I thought Spongehenge was weird and fun.
Patrick is unlikable and dumb in this episode.
Yeah, but he's unlikable and dumb in every episode. Personally, I found Spongehenge really unique and memorable, and that constant tune wafting through SpongeBob's holes is surprisingly harmonious and pleasant. It adds a constant sense of mystery and wonder here. As you heard, the main complaint is that Spongehenge tortures SpongeBob. While I really hate the overuse of that word, I think SpongeBob's suffering is part of what makes it interesting. It's like this mysterious curse has been permanently placed on SpongeBob, resulting in him being forever chased by jellyfish and being pushed for years to the very limits of his creativity and intelligence, seemingly all because of his bizarre holy anatomy.
They're attracted to my whistly holes.
If you've ever seen Spongehenge, I doubt you could say you've forgotten this episode, and the future segment really clinches that. SpongeBob carves a giant set of statues that literally play for thousands of years. I find myself asking a lot of questions in this episode. How much time passed from when SpongeBob entered the cave to when he finished the statues? What happened to Bikini Bottom to leave it such a wreck? Some human-made structures can survive not just centuries but millennia. And even if the ending is a little uncomfortable, I'm okay with viewers being left a little uncomfortable sometimes. I think I get why some people might not like it, as far as SpongeBob episodes go, it's a bit of a downer. But hey, everyone's back in the next episode, so clearly it wasn't canon. On a small side note, I love the fact that SpongeBob shows off what a skilled sculptor he is here. He's possibly even more talented at crafting statues than he is at making burgers. I swear, our Sponge is wasted in that place. And what do we got at number 5? The Krabby Chronicle. This is an infamous episode. I thought it was liked. It's very clever and a spectacular analogy for internet sensationalism. This episode has aged so painfully well. SpongeBob faces a question that many content creators on the internet often have to ask themselves. Can we create something entertaining that actually gets attention without hurting people? Obviously, yes. But can we create something entertaining and stand out from the crowd? Well, I don't know, but it's worth trying. Part of what I like about this episode is despite the serious question, they keep the stakes relatively light. The people of Bikini Bottom are mostly just inconvenienced by Krabs' bullcrap stories. And I think by the stakes being light, I think it makes a more digestible message. But what did other people think of the episode? Let's start with Pablo DG's opinion.
1 out of 10. One of the worst season 6 episodes, and one of the worst episodes of the show.
What are you talking about? This is the worst of season 6? Anyway, respects to your opinion. Krabby Chronicle received a very mediocre 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, and it was labeled an infamous episode by the Spongebob Wiki. And there's just so many bad comments about this episode. Blexar posted,
I hated how Mr. Krabs acted here and how this whole episode went. This episode is garbage. I give it 2 out of 10.
What did the wiki itself say about why it's bad?
The fake news torments the lives of the victims.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of the message.
And Mr. Krabs counterfeits money.
I mean, given the record of this jerk, does that really surprise you? He's buried a body after he poisoned a health inspector, had his star employee working under slave labor for 24 years, and puts children in mortal danger on a hazardous playground for money. I'd say counterfeiting is relatively kind behavior by Krabs' standards. Let's see if other comments give us a bit more insight.
The Krabby Chronicle and Ponyville Confessional are awful. Truth or Ed is a good one.
An Ed, and Eddie episode is better. Oh, that's stupid. No. I politely disagree that Ed, and Eddie is better. What did Danny Boy say?
This episode honestly makes me want to start a petition to remove Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob entirely.
Huh. Well, from what I can gather, people just really didn't like Krabs in this episode. Perhaps he falls into that irredeemable camp for some people here, and I totally get that. He's pretty insufferable. But I think he helps deliver the message that Krabby Chronicles is all about. That doing articles at the expense of others might get you attention, but it might also hurt people too. And are you okay with that? Obviously, on the internet, Krabs wouldn't be the first person to make money off fake news. But like Mr. Krabs sees here, a reputation follows you, and what goes around comes around. Number 4. Karate Island. This is such a divisive episode in the series, and I've never fully understood why. It's pretty straightforward. SpongeBob is captured on Karate Island. So Sandy goes delightfully Kill Bill on us, even dressing as the bride.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
And she storms her way through the karate masters to save her best friend. I love the simple but funny setup here, with SpongeBob roped into such an obvious scam. Even the opening advertisement he gets on tape here is just pure classic SpongeBob, with lots of silly stock footage and our favorite news announcer.
King of Karate!
But let's see what other reviews thought, such as Cody Speaks.
Pure crap. 2 out of 10. These episodes were horrible. The plots were pointless and the humour was crappy. This show is awful now.
Well, that doesn't even elaborate on why it's bad. So I kept looking. There was also this review from Davu.
Definitely one of the worst episodes in the series. Since season 4 premiered, it's been going nowhere but down. It's crap.
Yeah, but why?
Because it's crap.
Use your words. That 86 billion neuron cosmological anomaly between your ears.
It's very crap.
Oh, never mind. I mean, I'm all for criticism, but I can't stand reviews or comments like these because they're not actually reviews. It goes into no detail and just repeatedly states an episode is bad. I mean, we can go ahead and say an episode's crap, but we elaborate. Is it visually unpleasant? Is the story too surreal? Are the characters annoying? What parts or characters bothered you? Anyway, sorry, I'm way off topic here. My main negative feedback to this episode is SpongeBob gets a little bit too obnoxious and overconfident. He thinks he's become some sort of karate champion, but is never actually doing any karate. While I do love seeing Sandy do karate, I would have preferred both her and SpongeBob doing karate, rather than him just sitting on the throne. But I guess part of the joke is he's captured by timeshare salesman here. See, Cody and Debu, that was feedback going into specifics. That is how we help a show improve. Sorry to repeat myself, but I love SpongeBob, and the more baseless criticism people give of the show, the less the writers are actually going to listen to our feedback. But nothing against them, as these reviews were done years ago, and I'm sure they've improved since then. I hope you keep writing and keep improving. I am rapidly losing my voice for number 3, Squeaky Boots. Oh, this one is just charming. How can anyone hate it? But there's no doubt, it's definitely among the more divisive Season 1 episodes. I know the squeaks can be a little annoying, but I've heard some people call this the worst episode of Season 1. But I definitely disagree. This is way better than jellyfishing, by a country mile. I think it captures the irritation of an annoying sound well, and how one small sound can slowly chip away at our sanity. If you somehow haven't heard of this episode, Krabs gives SpongeBob some old Squeaky Boots instead of his pay. And of course, Spongy loves them, leading to Krabs, of course, reaping what he sows. I love this aspect of SpongeBob, how he just wholeheartedly embraces any random gift he's given and incorporates it into his character and lifestyle. Except maybe the oven mitts. We see the same thing when he gets that stupid hat. Jack's review in my Discord summed up the mixed reviews of this quite well.
Your enjoyment of this episode depends on whether you find a squeak an annoying sound.
And that's what most of the complaints seem to boil down to, a dislike of the repeated squeak sound. But it's driving Krabs insane, and he's a great villain here to reap what he sows. He's slowly driven insane by these boots, until he just loses it and eats them. I think Squeaky Boots is an example of Slide Whistle Stooges done well, but instead of it being Squidward, it's Mr. Krabs who created the problem in the first place. And unlike Slide Whistle Stooges, SpongeBob has no idea he's driving Krabs insane, and his obliviousness just makes it funnier. Personally, I think Squeaky Boots is an overhated, infamous episode. I get a lot of laughs out of it. And for number 2, sports.
Yeah, that's great!
I can't help it. I laughed like a buffoon at the sheer audacity of this episode. It presents a story this tremendously stupid, so earnestly, and I love it for that. Plus, it gives a good lesson on playing sports games safely. To give you an idea of what other people think, let's take a look at some of the comments. Classic Sagawa Chinese Cat says,
"This is the worst episode of the show.
Another fandom user said,
It's an extreme SpongeBob and Patrick torture episode."
I guess, but as the commenter Hashish pointed out, this is the revenge of the Squidward torture episodes. Sure, it's definitely not a smart episode, but I laugh a lot at the sheer stupidity of this concept. Squidward just teaches SpongeBob and Patrick how to play sports wrong, resulting in them repeatedly and horribly hurting themselves in sports, to a comical degree. Like, even not knowing the rules, how do these two manage to hurt themselves this badly? And that's pretty much the entire premise. They play the sports games wrong. And we just continue to ratchet up the ridiculousness and stupidity as we go, as they create a sort of Squidward run Olympic Games with two people? How? And why would anyone go to see this? And Squidward is the rule giver. King of sports? I don't know, it's really stupid. Fortunately, Sandy eventually steps in to ask SpongeBob the golden question.
Why not stop playing it if it hurts so bad?
That's a perfectly fair question, Sandy. I've yet to figure it out myself. Apparently these two are just too pea-brained to, stop playing the sport. Yeah, I admit, this is all stupid to the nth degree. But it's fast-paced, it's got funny dialogue, and I love how creatively stupid they are in using these sports items.
Oh, that was a foul!
Tell it to your mama, Squidward!
Mama!
Don't want to hear it.
Maybe it's just nice after all these years of Squidward suffering to just see him, have an episode where he turns the tables. Let's look at a more in-depth review of what other viewers think. What did Alpha Scary say?
A 7.8? This is the worst episode ever. This is just so vile and disgusting. It feels like it was written by James Wan. Squidward tortures SpongeBob and Patrick by making them play dangerous games with sports equipment.
I mean, they willingly torture themselves. That's part of what makes it so ridiculous. Like I always say, I think there's a lot to appreciate in modern SpongeBob, and I can definitely recommend this supposedly infamous SpongeBob episode. And for my number one choice, Are You Happy Now? I could not disagree more with a popular opinion on this episode, as Are You Happy Now is seen as one of the worst episodes of SpongeBob. It's often seen as one of the ultimate examples of a Squidward torture episode, and I do understand this perspective, but as someone who's watched just about every Squidward torture episode there is, might you indulge my perspective on this? So on the very unlikely chance you haven't heard of this episode, Squidward gets depressed and goes into home isolation after he realizes he has no happy memories. But you know what I found interesting here? For perhaps the first time ever here, Squidward and SpongeBob are seeing eye to eye. You could say
They're on the same page. Yeah.
SpongeBob isn't just being oblivious here. This is perhaps the first time SpongeBob truly sees how miserable Squidward is. He genuinely recognizes that Squidward has no happy memories that he can remember, and he's genuinely sad about that. They both are. Unlike usual, Squidward isn't talking down to SpongeBob or rolling his eyes at him. He's honestly reaching out and asking for help.
You're right, SpongeBob. I don't have a happiest memory.
But sadly, due to a string of bad luck, this leads to Squidward spiraling into depression. But it's important to note, SpongeBob didn't cause these mishaps. Spongy works his butt off to try and find things that Squidward would actually enjoy, not just what SpongeBob would enjoy. As much as I hate overusing that word, I think what makes a Squidward torture episode is when Squidward is tormented by outside forces. But in Are You Happy Now, Squidward is facing an inner turmoil. That same misery and turmoil he's been facing the entire series. But it can't be ignored now because it's very real depression. That's not Squidward torture, that's freaking real. And I like that when Squidward does become depressed, SpongeBob is surprisingly careful here. He actually leaves Squidward alone for weeks. He doesn't intervene until he realizes he might be in danger being alone in his house for weeks. Over that time, SpongeBob quietly checks in just to make sure Squidward's still alive and safe. The thing is, this is one of the first times the show has directly addressed the inner voice that has been causing Squidward misery for literal decades. And this is the first time SpongeBob stops and says, crap, my friend is depressed. What can I do to help him? And yes, the ending is clunky and abducting Squidward probably wasn't the right thing to do. And obviously, the implied self-harm jokes are not cool. But to the creators' credit, these scenes were deleted. The creators of the show realized they screwed up and corrected the episode, so I don't quite get why people hold a stick against them for that. What I also appreciate is I think this is a surprisingly accurate depiction of depression. Depression is not just feeling sad. It can be lacking feeling anything in day-to-day life. And it's one of the most terrifying things a person can go through. When my Discord community and I watched this episode, we ended up going into discussions of our own personal experiences of depression. And you know what? That is freaking awesome that an episode of SpongeBob would help us open up like that. As much as we've made strides, mental health remains a generally secretive subject outside of a psychologist's room. I'm not going to go on a tangent, but the fact that this supposedly infamous episode helps people open up about their personal experiences, that is something I rarely expect a kids show episode to do, yet alone one of the supposedly worst SpongeBob episodes of all time. Part of what makes Squidward so compelling over all these years is people can relate to his misery and his personal struggles. And that's the thing. Are You Happy Now is lightly discussing depression in a way that both kids and adults can understand. But it doesn't feel like an overbearing after-school special, it still feels like a SpongeBob episode. I'm not even gonna waste your time with some of the hypercritical, super angry reviews of this one. You've probably already seen them before. Frankly, to hell with my own review. I encourage you to actually watch Are You Happy Now for yourself. It's Season 8, Episode 17, and I would love to know what you think.
I think I actually feel kind of happy.
And if you have a favorite of these infamous episodes of SpongeBob, you have a guilty pleasure, or you think I missed one, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Please take care of yourself and each other. And as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Today's member question is from Patsy L. They ask, what is your favorite Halloween movie? Theirs is Nightmare Before Christmas, and their husband's is Monster House. Oh, that's easy. It's very scary. Every year I like to watch Garfield in Disguise, a spooky Halloween-themed Garfield movie from 1985, where Garfield and Odie are chased by 100-year-old pirate ghosts. If you're curious, it should be up on YouTube.